Hey everyone, welcome to our call today for Women in Aircraft Sales. I'm so glad that you're here, and I am thrilled to have Debbie Mercer joining us from Oklahoma City, where she's an escrow agent, but she also has a trust company, and that's what we're going to talk about today. It's U.S. Aircraft Guarantee, right? Debbie is the name of your
Aircraft Guarantee Trust Company.
Aircraft Guarantee Trust Company.
Yeah. Corporation.
And so tell me, what is a trust? Let's just start there so we know we're talking kind of on the same page. What's a trust?
So trusts are primarily used to set up ownership of an aircraft for a non-citizen, and it meets the requirements of the FAA, and it's widely accepted, and it maintains the registration and will help with, generally, the aircraft will have a higher resale value, being U.S. registered. So if you don't meet the criteria of a U.S. citizen, you can't register your aircraft here with the N registration. So that's how we accommodate and help clients.
So about how many aircraft do you think there are worldwide that are on U.S. trust, that are N registered and are based outside of the U.S. or just in a trust for some other reason?
That's something I don't know, but the airlines use trusts to register their aircraft. So I know that Aircraft Guarantee, we have about 1,150 aircraft registered in trust with us, and they're operating worldwide. So, but to tell you exactly how many aircraft are in trust through the US, I don't know.
Well, I think it's safe to say if you have 1,100, there are a bunch of airliners and trusts, and there are other trust companies out there. It's thousands of aircraft that are flying with an N registration that are based in trust, which may mean that the owner, the actual beneficiary of the aircraft, is not a full U.S. citizen, whether that's a company or an individual.
Right.
So how do you put a plan in trust? If I'm from a foreign country and I'm a citizen of that foreign country and I want to keep my plane N registered for various reasons, how do I become eligible to do that?
So you would first go through the vetting process, and we would ask information about your company. If you're going to use it for a business or an individual, we would vet you by collecting passport, proof of residence, or corporate documents about the president, the board of directors, to decide who the client's going to be. Then we would gather information in our engagement form about the aircraft and the use of the aircraft, where you're going to keep it. And then you'd go through the process of signing the trust documents that are approved by the FAA already. We would submit them to ACC Legal Counsel for review and acceptance, and then you would be ready to be placed in trust. You can buy an aircraft as a non-citizen and then transfer title to the trust, or it can be transferred directly from the person that you're buying it to the trust, depending on how it's structured.
That sounds a little bit complicated. How long does it take?
Well, it really has a lot to do with the client. You can fill out your engagement form, provide us with your documentation, and pay for the trust, and then within 3 to 5 business days, we can have you ready to go. ACC Legal takes about 3 days. Provide us with insurance. That's one of the requirements. We must be listed as, we have to have a liability policy for Aircraft Guarantee, so that we have insurance in case something happens. We don't want to be responsible, so the liability policy must be in our name. So providing those documents and insurance, then you're ready to go into trust.
Well, all of us on this call have experienced people who are slow to send documentation.
Yes.
When they're supposed to. How long does it typically take when it's not a client who's on top of getting everything there on time? A couple weeks?
Well, the beginning process is very quick because they're excited. Then there's a lull. 2 weeks to 2 months. It just depends on that client and how motivated and ready they are, ready to go into trust. Sometimes it can be held up too by maybe the delivery of the aircraft, or the aircraft's not ready yet. But a lot of our aircraft that we do are with Cirrus and their new delivery, and when they come to us, it's ready to go. You know, Cirrus is ready to deliver the aircraft and we're ready to put them in trust. And a lot of times manufacturers will come to us because they know it wants to remain on the US registry and that the client doesn't fit the criteria. So they'll get in touch with us pretty early on to get that going. We also do short-term ferry trust. In other words, a trust that's used. So you buy an aircraft that's US registered, you're going to fly it home to your foreign country and you want to register it there. But the seller's not going to allow you to fly it under his name home. Mm-hmm. You don't have registration, so you can do a short-term trust. Basically, you go through the same process, the insurance, the vetting, approval by ACC. You stay in trust for less than 6 months. You ferry the aircraft home, remove it from the US registry, and do your registration in your country. So that's used quite a bit too.
That, I find that that's really helpful and really valuable when, for instance, we're going from the US to Mexico, because yes, it's very difficult to get an XA registration on an aircraft when it's sitting in the US. So if we close in the US because that's where the seller feels comfortable with it, mm-hmm, but it's going to Mexico, this is a great tool to be able to get it into a hangar, onto an airport facility where the DGAC can come in, inspect the aircraft, and give the registry a whole lot faster. We had recently had a client who decided not to do it that mm-hmm way, and it took him an extra 3 months to get his aircraft registered. So
exactly,
it's definitely beneficial for buyers that are outside of the US to be able to have that kind of tool. So when we would use a trust when we need to ferry the aircraft to a different mm-hmm location, and we would use it when we would like to keep it in registered for resale reasons or appearance reasons, whatever right that looks like from a political standpoint. Is there another reason to use a trust, or are those the two primary ones?
That and, maintenance on an aircraft can be better under the US registry. The requirements for keeping your aircraft current with certain airworthiness directives and all, you have a better, in the United States, you have better facilities to maintain your aircraft than you do maybe abroad. So if it's US registered and maybe you buy it here and you want to go through some of those modifications, and you want to keep it on the in trust for that reason, that's a good reason. And then, like we said, resell. And people don't realize that because you have a company and the president, maybe the president's not a United States citizen, but maybe the other members are, it doesn't qualify. The CEO has to be a US resident or US citizen to register the aircraft. And your voting trust or voting interest, 75%. Well, who can look at their company if it's a large company and say 75% qualify? That's a lot to go through to figure out if they really are considered a US citizen, that they qualify to register the aircraft here.
So corporate structure for international companies may be another reason.
Yeah, and even US companies anymore. We have a lot of people that are not US citizens that are sitting on those boards and they don't qualify.
That's great. So we've talked about the advantages of being on a trust and some of the reasons to be in a trust. What are the laws surrounding this? You say that it has to go through approval process. What are some of the things that, as aircraft brokers or people who are working on contracts with aircraft, what are some of the pitfalls that we need to be aware of to make sure that we're helping our clients be able to take advantage of trusts adequately?
Okay, well, I think that you have to look at your buyer and if they qualify to register in the United States. If they don't qualify, then it's best to put them in trust if they're going to keep it under the in registry. Trusts have been used for more than 40 years for registration of aircraft, so they're well known and well used and widely used and accepted. And they're sometimes just set up for a structural purpose or simplification purposes and convenience. It can be maintained for an indefinite amount of time. The beneficial owner of the trust, the beneficiary, isn't necessarily the operator. The operator can be a third party. There's a lot of advantages that are there in the trust that the buyer could use.
And one of those things that kind of frustrates us sometimes when we're trying to get a hold of the owner of the aircraft is that it shelters you from people knowing that you own the aircraft to some extent, which is beneficial to people who need to maintain privacy.
Yeah, the outside world isn't able to see that as transparent, but the FAA knows exactly who the owner of the aircraft is. And all that information is housed inside the FAA and not on their website. You'll see that Aircraft Guarantee is the owner of the aircraft. We're the registered owner, but not the beneficial owner. But the FAA knows that beneficiary. They know who the operator is. They know where the aircraft is supposed to be housed. Example, just this weekend, we got a phone call from Panama City and an aircraft had gone down or had issued an emergency. So they called us and we got in touch with the owner and everything was fine. But there's a real good connect because we do keep a lot of information on our clients and know where they are, and we keep a good rapport with them. We're always talking to them about certain situations. If maybe they've got to do an airworthiness, they need a power of attorney in order to get that taken care of with the DAR or somebody that they're working with. Their insurance has to be maintained and current each year. So there are things that keep us in touch with them on a regular basis anyways. And I'm trying to think of anything else.
Well, I have another question for you. And if I'm representing a buyer and I'm buying an aircraft that's currently in a trust, what questions should I ask or what things should I be aware of to make sure that I'm representing my buyer well?
I think that the seller needs to be proactive in notifying the trust company that he's going to be removing from trust and selling the aircraft and get that process started. It's fairly quick, but there's also the advantage if maybe you are selling the aircraft to somebody that doesn't fit the criteria for US registration, that trust could be transferred to the new owner. And
that's great to
have
know.
to break, yeah. And that happens a lot. We have aircraft that will go from one owner in Germany to another owner in Germany. The trust remains the same. We update the information on who the beneficial owner is, notify the FAA, and it's complete. There's not a bill of sale filed or anything.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to remind everyone that this is completely open to Q&A. I triggered Debbie with a few questions, but if anyone else has a question, give a shout out and let me know, or put it in chat and I'll certainly pass that along to her if you have other questions.
Renee, I have questions, but I'm trying to figure out how to put them in chat.
Well, just ask them, Chris.
Oh, okay. All right. So this has always been a question for me, Debbie. The FAA requires that LLCs prove citizenship and they don't ask corporations to prove citizenship. Why? And do you think they'll ever change that?
I believe the why is because to form the US corporation, you should have a membership that's US. I don't really know on the corporation side. And then, do I think that they'll ever change it? No.
Okay.
I don't think that will change.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything about it changing. And anybody can go and form a corporation, and it's a US corporation, but do your board of directors and your officers really meet the criteria when you answer the questions at the FAA? And you sign that application for registration? Are you telling the truth when you sign your name as president of that corporation that you're a US citizen? Or
Right.
that you meet the criteria? Now the LLCs, they do vet those better. You know, we say you have to check the box and you have to give that to the FAA and say, yes, I'm a US citizen. 2/3 of our membership are US citizens. So we qualify. You can also register the aircraft as a non-citizen US corporation too. You provide them with the information regarding the whereabouts of the aircraft. I think you have to do a report every 6 months. I think that's correct. I have it right. That's a box that you can check for a non-US owner of a US corporation.
Okay. Debbie, Deborah asked the question, you mentioned insurance. Will aircraft guarantee be the additional insured or
Yes.
they primary? They're additional
You're
insured?
additional insured. Mhm.
And then what is the liability, minimum liability amount required?
1 million
Okay.
for
That answers the
liability.
question, Deborah.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question?
I have another question.
Yeah.
So Debbie, you mentioned about confidentiality, that certain records are only available to the FAA, but if I were to request them, they're not maybe on the website, but if I were to request them, I could see who the beneficial owner is, couldn't I?
Yes,
Those
you
records
can.
are public. Do you do double trusts to try and bury ownership?
No,
Okay.
no.
All right, and you mentioned ACC. Can you tell me what that stands for and who they are? Because it's like a black hole to me. Who are the ACC?
Okay, it's the aeronautical, the attorneys for the FAA, the aeronautical, what does it stand for? I've said it for 20 years, ACC. The aeronautical.
Right, it's
the
FAA lawyers, right?
It's the FAA lawyers. I mean, now you can be FAA legal counsel, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about through the Aeronautical Commission. What is it? I'll have to go ask. Kaylee knows. She'd probably go, come on. But we have attorneys that work at the FAA that review our documents and issue their opinions if the trust qualifies and that everything is okay. And basically the trust is written, and if we change one word in it, they're going to throw it out. They're going to have to review it. It can take more time. So our trusts are tried and true. They've approved it. And if we try to modify it, they know.
How many lawyers are there?
I would say, I think there's about 5 that we deal with. I think that's a good number to say, about 5.
How fast do they turn around your documents from the time you submit them?
We can have a good day where we turn them in the morning and we get them in the afternoon. And then say in December, when we had a little bit of a closure, it was a week out. Most of the time, we like to say 3 days. And then we're safe. We feel comfortable saying 3 days. If we turn it in on Monday, we expect to have it back on Wednesday. We have a good rapport with them. It's a pretty simple process unless we've modified or changed that trust agreement in any way, shape, or form. You know, if I just change 2 words, they're going to know it. Or if there was a typographical error, I mean, it's a system where that shouldn't happen, but there are glitches, and maybe a trust number was transposed on one document. Should never happen that way, but you know, things go crazy. They'll pick that up, they'll catch it. So they do have a very good system of making sure that it stays consistent.
That's great. Well, does anyone else have questions for Debbie? Debbie, thank you.
Thank you.